Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome today. Once again, is Wednesday, June 26, 2024. This is our second afternoon work session. Our topic here is an update on the Emergency Services Capital Project. My name is John Kafalas, Commissioner from District 1, joined by my colleagues, Kristen Stevens from District 2, Jody Shattuck-McNally from District 3, and of course our County Manager, Lorenda Volker. Our Larimer County Sheriff is present also, and a whole lineup of folks from facilities and the Sheriff's Office, emergency services, and all of that. At this time, I believe I will turn it over to Mr. Ken Cooper.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Great to see you all today. Thank you, Commissioners, for the time, and Lorenda. Ken Cooper, Facilities Director. Commissioner Kafalas mentioned the folks that we have here today. Corey and Steve are here from PEC. They did, you'll recall from previous conversations, the study that we had done regarding the potential for electrification for the mechanical systems for this building. So we're excited to show you that today and be able to inform what that would look like for the project. Jeff Arrett with the Architect Studio. Of course, Justin Weitzel, Director of Emergency Services, Josh Fudge, our Budget Director, and then actually several folks, too, that came are interested on the energy performance piece. So we've been kindly visited by folks from the City of Fort Collins with Barb Andrews is here from their Key Accounts Office. Folks from Train are here today as well. To listen in, specific primarily to the piece on mechanical systems. So we're grateful for that. David is here, and Matt with our team in facilities, and Chad and several other folks as well. So we're all interested in kind of what's going to be presented, and hearing what you would like to do going forward. Not only specific to this project, but a little more broadly when it came to. Or when it comes to future projects with the mechanical systems involved. So unless you have questions, we can hop right in. We're going to go through a series of different kind of mini presentations on the project. Justin is going to kick us off and talk about a little bit of the history of how we got to where we got to. You'll recall that there was a study done. Jeff Arrett led that on the Architect's Studio side, talking about what we might do at the current site at 1303 North Shields. Became pretty quickly obvious that it was going to be too much money, too much time to wait for FEMA, things like that because of the floodplain issues that we have there. So we transferred instead to go find land, which we did. Again, County Roads 19 and 56 in LaPorte. And the site has it's got basically one primary kind of bogey, and that is the moratorium that they have on water there, but we do have a 3/4 inch tap that came with the purchase of the property. The design team has pushed that into the project, and we have solutions for how to deal with that. I wouldn't call it ideal, but it's certainly workable for the project. So with that, I think unless there are questions, it looked like you may have
Ken,
questions.
thank you very much, and welcome, colleagues. I don't believe we have any questions at this time, so we'll turn it over to to Justin Weitzel.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Justin Weitzel, Emergency Services Director for the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. As you all have come out and visited and know, the facility, the picture here depicts it's from 1980s, but the original building was from 1957, and that's where we currently still reside. In 1991, the Sheriff's Office worked on some blueprints. At that time, because of budgets, the county decided to withgo the proposed 1991 building, and that's where we are with our building now. The 91 blueprints are a lot closer to where we are with what we're looking at now than where we're out at our 1303 facility. Just real quick, the number, and I think sometimes it gets hidden, but our full-time, part-time, and volunteer resources, if you were to add up all of the people that operate out of the emergency services facility, there's over 300 people that operate out of our facility. And it's quite a few people, and you don't realize that until you start adding all the numbers up with the volunteers and different people that work out of that facility. The next one is, I believe, the risks. You can go ahead to the next one. And you've all been out there, like I said, the facility lacks a training room. We had to turn that into cubicle space, so we no longer have a training room for the volunteer teams. or for our full-time people. We don't have meeting rooms, we don't have huddle rooms. We have one shower, and we have very limited bathrooms for male and female. So the storage gear, obviously, we lack a lot of storage. So those are what we lack here. If you look at all the state and the county have done risk assessments throughout the county, and everything that's on those lists from those matrix, when they look at the risk throughout the county, everything on there except for cyber tech and infrastructure are what we respond to, emergency services responds to, the fires, the floods, the highest risk incidents. And I would even argue that if there's a cyber attack or an infrastructure attack, we're going to be dealing with some type of problem from that, very similar to what we saw during COVID. Even though we don't respond to things like COVID, we did jump in and help with incident management and delivering resources and supplies during that. So pretty much everything that's been identified from the state or the county is something that emergency services deals with. So.
Yeah, as a quick transition into what's been designed already, you might recall that the commissioners approved $3 million to get us rolling on this project a couple of years ago. That was used, some of it was used to purchase the land, and then there's also design dollars built into that as well. Also built into that is the study on the HVAC piece, or the mechanical piece of it. So Jeff is going to take us through. One thing I didn't mention is that we have engaged also with our community development group. We've had a couple meetings with them talking about just in general what the project's going to entail, looking for some ideas that we have that we really want to try to find ways to solve. Things like site lighting. Tonight we have a meeting in Livermore to look at that. Each of our projects really has kind of drawn attention. You're going into a site often, in this case another one, potentially for a place where there is no campus today, right? And everybody that lives out there, I get it. We would all understand that if we were there and saw, a new, small glow that comes from a campus like that. And so that's one thing that we really talked to the community development group about. We're really trying to focus on, Justin mentioned the 18 staff. So we're really trying to size this thing primarily for the folks that are there every day. Allowing for the site lighting and some other impacts like that for the neighbors to happen only on occasion when there's an event and when it drives the need to have, in some cases, hundreds of people. So Jeff's going to talk through some of that. We did have a couple meetings already with the neighbors. That's not required as part of the location and extent process, but we've done that to try to be really good neighbors with them. We've committed to continue to keep them updated, on where we're at with things. And the other direction that we received pretty clearly from the board in the past several meetings that we've had in front of you folks is specific to the partnerships. We've explored lots of different opportunities for that. Tim Keaton, Justin Weitzel, our sheriff, John Fayen, others on their teams have been exploring all those things. It's very easy to find partnerships on using the facility. It's pretty tough to get them to partner in, and actually come up with funding. The other piece is that we do have, and we'll share this later as we get through the presentation, but we have a series of things that we think are pretty likely to be successful grant possibilities as well. So we'll give you more detail on that. But with that, Jeff's going to go through and show you some of the features of the campus itself.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Arrett. I'm with the Architects Studio. Just give you a quick high-level overview of where we've progressed with the design so far. This is just a kind of a pretty picture aerial image, roughly from the southeast corner of the site, kind of looking from above the intersection at 19 and 56. As we talk about kind of the facility and program needs, Ken touched on this. We did an initial needs assessment, completed a program plan with the Sheriff's Office back in November of 2021. In the interim, between now and then, we had the property search and some due diligence on the property. And then we updated that plan in 2023 based on some additional roles that have been added to their services and some new staffing and equipment projections that they had. And I guess really, the overarching project goal is to meet the long-term mission of emergency services on this site. When we hear the Sheriff's Office folks talk about this, they're always talking about this as the home of emergency services for the next 50 years. So I think everybody acknowledges kind of this is it, this is where they're going to be for the long term. So we're trying to keep that in mind with everything we do.
Jeff, before you continue, usually I check in with my colleagues, but I have a quick question here.
Yep.
And that is, given what you've just said and what our facilities director has stated, is the building being designed in such a way that if we need to expand the building, it's easier to do?
Yes, we're looking to accommodate expansion both in apparatus bay space and in administrative space. So both of those are being considered. We're trying to forecast as far out as Justin and anybody else can predict what's coming and make accommodations for that. But beyond that, if there's additional expansion required, we are allowing physical space for that and, capacity of building systems as well.
Thank you, Jim.
This is just quickly an overview of the site. I think you've probably seen this before as part of the property acquisition, but you can see out of the 50-acre parcel, we're really limiting our development to kind of the eastern 1/3 of the site for building, parking, and some detention functions that happen over there. Detention pond, not detention in the judicial sense of the word. And then if you could move to the next one. So currently, based on the needs and kind of the result the sheriff's office is after, we're looking at a 38,000 square foot building. I wanted to break that down a little bit because I think it's important to understand where those square feet are coming from. The sheriff's office, administration and office areas, offices, workspaces, conventional meeting rooms for their staff take up about 6,500 square feet. There's a large training incident command post room that accommodates about 100 people, and then some staff support spaces like break room, locker rooms, showers, an indoor fitness area. And a lot of those are functions that they either don't have or they've lost in their current facility as they've expanded office space. So that's about 10,000. And then the Larimer County specific apparatus, equipment, and wash bay take up about 16,000 square feet. And then they have bays for their partner agencies, dive rescue, search and rescue, Diamond Peaks, that take up about 5,500 square feet. So that's how we get to the 38,000. As Ken mentioned, we have about 100 parking spaces that accommodates that influx during bigger events. And there's some outdoor training, trial, and physical fitness areas on the site. Since we have the acreage for it, that's a nice synergy. This is just a little bit of a larger look at the arrangement. The primary access will come off of County Road 56. That was kind of adjusted after we got some feedback from engineering and some neighbors about traffic on County Road 19. We actually chose to move the access point. We have sort of a loop road running around the facility. Most of the parking and the public entrance is on the south side of the building, and the north side is mostly apparatus bays and operating areas. Just a couple of highlights here for the building itself. We're really designing this for longevity and resilience, using non-combustible masonry and steel construction. Things like a backup generator, obviously, for a facility like this are important. One sort of unique piece about it is a risk category 4 classification because it's an emergency response facility. That's a building code requirement. Most facilities like, the fleet services, road and bridge that you've built lately are risk category 2, as are most office buildings. So the category 4 requires us to increase our resistance to snow, wind, and seismic loads to ensure for ongoing operations. So that's about a 50% increase in the load requirements in some cases. And then we've made just some real deliberate choices about the configuration of the building. This is just an overview of the plan. You can see off to the lower left, the green areas are the admin office areas and support spaces. The blue region in the middle is the training incident command room that's kind of centrally located. And then the bar of space off to the east are the 6 apparatus bays for the sheriff's office, and then there's 2 apparatus bays and a wash bay for the partner agencies, and the wash bays for all the agencies. But all of these are pull-through bays, which gives them some flexibility that they don't have today in terms of being able to drive trucks with trailers straight through and not having to jockey pieces of equipment around within the building. And then just a couple of overall images of what we envision the building will look like, kind of from County Road 56. And then a second image just a little bit closer to the front entrance of the building where most of the public functions are kind of concentrated. We have the staff break room, and the training room has some outdoor breakout space, and the front entrance and a administrative conference room along the front of the building. So that's kind of the overall character of it right now.
Very good. Thank you, Jeff. Questions about the building at all? Yeah, thank you.
Let's see if my colleagues have questions or comments. Commissioner Shaddock McNally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually would like to ask a couple of them. First, thank you all. This is really great to see kind of what it might look like. My first question is about the equipment. I believe it was Captain Shellhammer and Justin Whitesell that had taken us on a tour, and we saw the need for some of that really high-end, expensive equipment that's sitting out in the elements, exposed to the elements. So that those bays are going to help protect those and keep those in there that they were using the Cameron Peak Fair. And you made sure we saw all those. And so I wanted those bays are specifically designed for those specialized equipment. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the bays are sized for the largest of the equipment that they have, door openings and everything, which are a constraint on their current facility. And the plan, as it's depicted now, the intent is to get all of the equipment inside, out of the elements, inside of the heated bays, because that's a major issue right now for them.
Nope, you answered it.
So I see, since I live in unincorporated Larimer County, I'm very familiar with ditches. And I was wondering about the two ditches on the property. And I see the properties, the design is in between them. Is there any water table issues or any easements or setbacks because of those ditches and right-of-ways, et cetera? So, as I said, I'm familiar with
They're
them.
easy to work with. Yeah. Yeah, Jeff, you want to add to that?
Sure, so the ditch that kind of dips into the southeastern edge of the property is an active irrigation ditch, and we are kind of wholesale avoiding that on purpose. They've already said they won't take any development flows from the property, so we have to, handle all of our drainage independently of that ditch. The second one that you see, good eye on catching that, traversing, that's really, from all indications, is just kind of an abandoned agricultural ditch that there's no flows in it, there's no easements associated with it, nobody claims any ownership to it. It just seems to be a drainage feature historically of the site. But even that, we are trying to stay clear of, just so we don't have to change that historical condition. As far as we know, we're well outside of any setbacks for the actual irrigation ditch itself. We do have some initial boring information. I don't think we found any groundwater issues out there as of yet with the placement of the building, the distance it is from the ditch, so.
My last question for now is, as a lot of folks know, I'm very big on night sky protection, dark skies, and so we're currently looking at doing those, and I so understand why that's important, and I know, but it's also for them to have safety. So is that part of this? Because it is, trying to respect, we're encroaching out on these areas, and
Right.
it's important to protect that. So I'm just curious what that looks like.
Yeah, that was a big piece of the conversation that we had with community development, and we'll continue to, right? To try our best to do all we can to really, we won't eliminate it, but we'll do as much as we can to minimize it, and particularly to make it as minimal as we can for everyday use. In a large event, there's going to be the need for additional parking lot lighting and things like that. But for day in, day out, we're going to try to keep that on the very bottom end of what's allowed. So yeah, I don't think there's a lot more to add to that. Those are great questions and things that were all obviously priorities for the neighbors and have been and will be. So thank you.
Can I have just one half more? Thank you, appreciate it. Sorry, I really invested in this, and I think this is an important building. And I'm really invested in some of our phenomenal volunteer agencies, like the search and rescue that have been, housed at that, and they're really critical partners. I'm assuming, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm assuming they were kind of involved with some of the discussions for what they need in the planning in this space, and their accommodation for them to have access and grow their volunteer base as well.
Yes, I met with each president and their individuals that they wanted to bring to meetings. I sat down with them and discussed what they would like to see. I had them send me their wants and needs, and I have incorporated as much of those into the project as I could. A couple small things were left out, like a swimming pool. Ideally, having a swimming pool for practice would be great, but those types of things I had to forego.
Thank you. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens, anything?
Yeah, can you show on site where there would be some of the training opportunities? Is it, you know,
The, maybe the site or,
is there equipment that goes outside that needs to be, I mean, I don't know what that looks like.
So when you mean equipment that goes outside, as far as like hardware, equipment, like vehicles or?
I'm not sure what your training looks like.
So we do quite a few different things outside. ATV training we do outside, driving the ATVs, teaching people how to drive the ATV, so hopefully they don't go and crash them and create problems for risk management. And then we also do line digging for the wildland firefighters. That's our primary butter when we go out and fight wildland fire, is being able to dig lines. So we would be going outside digging line. We also do a lot of map and compass outdoors. The search and rescue team does a lot of tracking and using their dogs outdoors. So this facility would facilitate a lot of that because of the acreage, that we'd be able to do some of that with. I know there has been a little bit of discussion with the neighbors about drones, and so we want to be cognizant of those concerns. So we would find other places to go do our training with the drones, like Chris Minfield with CSU, because we don't want to, we want to be neighbors to those around us, and we want to be part of the community. We're not trying to separate ourselves from them. So we'd work with them on anything like that. But a lot of it facilitates the outdoor training. At our current facility, we do have physical fitness, like a rope climb and what some may call monkey bars, but more pull-up bars in our world. They're out there as well, and we would build that out at the new facility and try and make it to where it's aesthetically pleasing as well, so that the neighbors don't have to stare at some horrible piece of equipment.
But no swimming pool, but monkey bars.
Yeah.
And then I noticed the helipad. Is there a helipad there?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Is that something that you have currently on site for right now?
We don't have a designated helipad. We have landed helicopters in that 12 acres
Okay.
out to the west of our facility. We've actually landed 3 helicopters in one day, all at the same time in that 12 acres. If we had a large incident, Cameron Peak, High Park, something like that, we would use this as a temporary landing zone until we could get Chrisman Field stood up or something like that. CSU works great with us to stand up Chrisman Field typically for those larger incidents, but this would be a temporary location to get folks and equipment to the site if needed.
Okay, thank you.
I believe Captain Shellhammer would appreciate the reference to monkey bars. You could check with him on that. I do have 2 questions before we move on to systems analysis. One is, excuse me, in looking at this picture, has any consideration been given to any kind of educational component to this facility? I don't know if we'll get much foot traffic, I can't imagine, but would there be an opportunity for like kids going to LaPorte schools or this or that to visit and learn what emergency services does? So that's my first question.
For sure. We're always open to anybody that wants to come in. We've done Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We've done school coming out to visit, so definitely the LaPorte schools, Cash Laputer Elementary, Cal Laputer Middle School would be a great addition. It would be a little bit closer to them for them to come visit. And I think it's great because then that gives us the opportunity to teach the younger kids, like if you do get separated or lost during hikes. So we can really work towards that, and this would be a great facility for that. The one we currently have is a little small to bring in large groups, but this one would be a lot more conducive for that type of opportunities for us. And then one of the things that I've talked with our county folks is being able to use this site as a demonstration site for wildfire safety. All the landscaping and everything around it should meet the county expectations for wildfire safety. And those things that we're asking the residents and communities to do, we should demonstrate that on our site so that we can walk them through and like, hey, this is what it should look like around your home. No flammable materials up against the side of your house, rocks, things that are unflammable.
Great, thank you, Justin. My second question before we move on, and that is on the subject of partnerships, what is the extent of the communication we've had with all of the various volunteer fire protection districts that are up in that neck of the woods? And what kind of input have they provided to help inform our decisions?
Yeah, so we've communicated with the majority of the fire departments up in Livermore, Poudre Canyon, Glacier View, Red Feather Lakes, Crystal Lakes. They have pretty well-developed facilities. The biggest thing this would provide them is a training center that's a little bit more robust and ability to seat more people into it. We can also do multi-agency training at our facility, so when we work with the fire departments, we can bring multiple agencies in rather than just going up to Livermore and only training them. Now we can bring Livermore, Glacier View, Crystal Lakes down to our facility and work out of there, and even the southern ones, Pinewood Springs, typically they don't like to come as far north, but we typically try and work with Loveland or something like that when we do training down there. So we try and accommodate all the fire departments because we work with them a lot. And so we're always looking for training opportunities and making sure that whatever we do benefits them at the same time.
Great, thank you, sir. Let's move on.
Great.
Ken.
Yeah, next we'll hand it over to Steve and Corey with PEC. We asked them to minimize the number of options. They started, I think, at, 40.
Maybe it does.
And it got to 9, and they were able to get down really to 3 primary things that we'll look at together. And you'll see the color-coded piece. The baseline is basically what we've done, what we do as a typical in our buildings. The electrification is going forward with full electrification, but without geothermal. And then the last one is what was afforded to this site, and that's to go full electrification, but with geothermal as the primary for the project. So the things that they're going to share are going to be kind of coded to look at the comparatives for that. So,
thanks, Ken. I'm Steve with Professional Engineering Consultants, and this is Corey.
As much as you folks could talk into the mics, that would help us.
Is that okay?
That is much better.
Okay, thanks. I'm Steve with Professional Engineering Consultants on the mechanical team. We worked on Corey as well, worked on the systems analysis. Ken already introduced the fact that we've looked at a multitude of system options and boiled it down to 3 options that we thought were viable options to review in this analysis. The baseline system, a system that would typically be installed on Larimer County buildings with 2 alternate options that would allow us to shift to electrification. And we assess that for decarbonization and fiscal responsibility. So as we took these 3 systems, we built out a theoretical model of this building with the location and ran the analysis over a year to predict what the energy usage would be. This first graph shows the actual energy usage of the 3 systems. First, on the left, we see the baseline, very comparable to the initial electrification option that doesn't involve geothermal. You can see the lighter gray option in that graph shows that almost 80% of the energy usage is natural gas, which we were looking to move away from in this analysis. Geothermal really outperforms both options at about 1/3 of the energy usage. Could you go to the next slide?
Yep.
From there, we started looking at the carbon emissions from these 3 options. So we expounded that over a 25-year period, which is the life cycle we chose for this project. And we can see that, interestingly enough, the electrification option comes out as the highest as far as producing carbon emissions. The baseline that the county typically uses is our middle option, and the geothermal is just above 1/3 of the emissions. So a really well-performing system. One note that I would like to point out is that at the moment, the electric grid is not that clean. I know there's a lot of a shift to clean up our electric grid, and we as consumers are working with the power production team to try and pair up with that goal when the electric grid is cleaner than the burning natural gas. So PVREA would be the power supply company for this particular job. They currently market 63% of their power is carbon-based, and they have a 2030 goal of to be 80% renewable. Yeah.
PVREA.
PVREA, yeah. Beyond that, we haven't got much data, how clean their grid will be, so we just stuck with that commitment that we got from them. But we'll assume that that'll get cleaner with time. Do you mind just bumping back one slide? So the difference between the geothermal and the baseline was about 930 tons of carbon. We wanted to put just that into context. What is that delta in maybe more understandable terms? It would be almost the equivalent of carbon sequestered by nearly 1,000 acres of trees, 2 million miles driven by an average gasoline vehicle, or nearly 1 million pounds of coal burned. So a significant amount of carbon in that 25-year period. Sorry, do you have a question?
No, please finish your statement.
Okay.
But then I want to check at this, once you're done, before we move on to costs, I'm curious if my colleagues have any
Yeah,
questions.
absolutely.
But please finish your sentence. You were in the middle of a sentence.
That was pretty much me rounding that that part of that off.
So colleagues, do you have anything, Commissioner, regarding, please proceed.
Okay. So from here, now we're going to move on to the dollars and cents. I think we all know that the price of natural gas right now is significantly cheaper than electricity. The cost calculation is definitely a little bit muddied, with the way they do the calculations. But with this particular job, one energy unit we used a million BTUs of electricity would cost you $43.
What was that MMBTU stand for?
A million BTUs. There's multiple different units of measure. Electricity typically comes in kilowatts. Gas usually comes in therms. But just to have apples to apples comparison, we did the conversion to millions BTUs just to get that $43 to the $8.50 for the same unit of energy. With that in mind, if we could go to the next slide. Looking at our annual operating costs, we see that early on we mentioned that 80% of the power for the baseline comes from natural gas. So it's interesting to see, even though the geothermal system had about 30% of the energy usage of the baseline, we see a comparable annual energy usage just because of that $43 delta in the cost. The annual electrification system is significantly more to operate. Just because it uses about the same amount of energy, but all of that is electricity, none of it's natural gas. Can we go to the next slide?
Questions? Commissioner Stevens.
Sure. I just have a couple of questions. So, you don't have to take the slide back, but the one that showed that the electrical grid becoming 80% renewable. I mean, if they are able to achieve like 100% and there's more battery storage technology that comes forward, I mean, could that graph go down at all?
Absolutely.
And then with regard to the costs of electrification, I mean, as we bring on renewables, I mean, some of the costs have gone down for electricity. Do you think that, I mean, do you see these numbers going? I mean, just because, I guess, my thing is we're always talking about electrifying everything. I mean, that's kind of a solution for dealing with greenhouse gas emissions. And this is kind of counterintuitive to what we've, kind of all been told about electrification of buildings, for example. So,
You gonna take that one, Steve?
Yeah, sure.
Right, so
And who are you, sir?
Corey Rhodes with PEC. The difficulty that we have right now with really projecting, are we going to get to 100%? What's going to happen with the rates? There's so much opinion that you really can't say for sure. Technology could change. The extrapolations can change. So we really have to go based on what we know now. There was just, I think 2 weeks ago in France, their electric rates went negative because they had so much wind and solar on board and the demand went down so low, and their nuclear plants could only turn down so low that they had too much power than they could consume. But that's a blip, right, that we don't know. And then you talk about the infrastructure that's going to have to be invested to get all these renewables into the grid and the modernization of the grid. So then there's the argument that our costs are going to escalate because of that infrastructure investment. So I think we really just need to base the decisions on what we know now, because it's really hard to predict where technology and infrastructure investments will take us. Will we get a lot more expensive? Will we stay where we are? Or will we reduce in the future? I don't think we know enough because there's so much happening so fast in this space. So that's why we felt it was responsible to say that your electric provider wants to be 80% carbon-free by 2030. Let's base the decisions on that. And hopefully that slope even flattens out more, but we don't really know if that's going to come to fruition.
With the natural gas, I mean, yeah, no, I'll just save it, thank you. That's fine.
Are you good, Commissioner Shattuck? Please proceed, Steve.
Okay, thank you. Right, so moving from the operational costs, we worked with a local construction company, A&P, to get an idea of initial costs for the various systems. Blue will be your baseline, red will be the electrification, and green will be geothermal. The reason we have multiple red and multiple green graphs is that there's a big push at the moment to shift to high-performing systems, and there's a lot of state and federal grants available. We wanted to showcase with grants and without grants. There are more options available for geothermal at the moment, which is why we showcased several options depending on how many we may be eligible when this project kicks off. Right now, the baseline shows about a $2.7 million price tag. The electrification option is more affordable to install, and with grants comes out to about 1.6. Historically, geothermal has been out of reach for a lot of building owners at about, as you can see, $4.2 million for the same install. But with all the grants and tax credits that are coming in, it's a lot more in reach at the moment for building owners to move towards geothermal and get the high-performing systems. These are fairly conservative options, but we're looking at a $72 a square foot difference to an $85 a square foot difference between the baseline system and geothermal, assuming we get all credits. Can we go to the next slide? From here, what we did is we joined up the operating costs, the initial costs, and we did a 25-year life cycle cost analysis to determine what our initial cost would be, just to get apples to apples. We see that the electrification option, interestingly enough, despite the annual operating costs being more, that initial low price tag option puts the electrification option as the most affordable of the three. However, that red line shows the carbon production of it, and with the grid, that electrification option, most affordable, at the moment would produce the most carbon. So even though we were shifting to electrification, we'd kind of be moving away from the ultimate goal. Geothermal, over that 25-year period, shows a slight increase in cost once you've taken into account operating costs and initial cost, but shows the carbon production being at about a third of the baseline. So no clear-cut winner, but some interesting data to look into as we're making this decision. Do you mind bumping to the last slide? Finally, we did a quick analysis. This was not very detailed on implementing solar. It seems like it would be worth looking into. We are going to look at making this building solar ready, but as of right now, I believe we're not going to move ahead with that without further analysis.
Yeah, as a quick follow-up to that, thank you, Steve. You'll recall, commissioners, that in the fleet campus that we're, getting toward the end of, that we looked at, a 30-year life cycle and so on for what that would cost, and it was about a 30-year payback, right, on the front end. So we did do the structural improvements to the facility to allow for that to change once the finances kind of catch up on the technology of it. I think we're recommending the same thing here, where the impacts on the front end aren't too bad when you know it on the very front end, you can add to the structural enough to the facility to allow for eventual implementation of solar. We don't think that the front end implementation, though, is worthy of the extra, roughly $300,000 at this time. We can pretty easily add it at a future date, similar to what we're talking about for the Fleet Campus as well. It doesn't change the overall performance of the building, particularly if the three of you decide to support the project and decide to support geothermal. We're getting an awful lot of gains out of the mechanical system that wouldn't be significantly changed by adding solar at this time. So I hope that's generally clear to you, so.
Can I ask one clarifying question? I think I know the answer, and I think I recall when we talked about this. So when you say get the building ready, the wiring inside the building, the structure has to be ready. Retrofitting it is very expensive. Putting it in when the building is being constructed is really doable, very affordable. That gives us the flexibility of adding solar at any point down the road without having to tear apart the building?
That would be the goal, yes. We'd have that all, that's what, Steve mentioned, solar ready, so, yeah. So when things catch up on the technology and cost, piece, we would be in a position where we could add it at and get some economy out of it, so.
It's especially the structure and the wiring that is really expensive later, so you do it now, it's much more cost effective.
Okay. Questions about that? Okay.
Well, actually, I'm thinking for a moment.
Yeah.
I want to check with my colleagues, but
Sure.
do you folks have any questions? I guess mine would be then, we've had this conversation before, and we always seem to go to the option of the savings are not that significant, and we need to get have the building ready. But what's going to trigger when we are ready to actually put solar panels on this building? Why can't we do that now if it's only costing $300,000 extra? And even though I see the dollar amount changes, I guess I'd like to have a little bit further discussion on that.
We certainly could. Yeah, we can certainly make that happen on the front end of it. We're confident enough that if we move forward with the building and if we move forward with geothermal, that we're tackling the vast majority of the gains from a mechanical standpoint. The tagging on of putting solar on there doesn't have the same positive impact that the geothermal would. So I guess to not dance around it too much, we're recommending if we move forward that we would do geothermal, but that we would have the building solar ready and not do it quite yet. So
Rather than installing the solar now, the project is $31 million.
Yeah.
If we considered solar panels installed now and allowed the energy to come from solar with some kind of backup system, would the price tag be $31.3 million, or could you help me understand?
yeah, a little more than that, Commissioner. I'll go back a couple slides here. So the difference on the front end cost, if we move forward with what we typically do, right? You're looking at roughly $2.7 million for the mechanical. If we move forward with geothermal on the front end, we're about $500,000 more than that. That's after some grants that we fully expect that we will be, successful, with the pursuit of. So it's not a huge change, but the cost to operate goes down. The greenhouse gas goes significantly down. So those things are big jumps in improving. The solar piece for where we've been at is not the big jump, but we could easily do it. It would now would be a great time to do it. We could also have it ready and wait till the future for that.
Well,
So
It'll be interesting to see how what my colleagues think, and let's continue with
Yep.
some of the additional slides.
yeah, so
where that takes
Josh is going to take us through a little bit of this in terms of the actual impact on the county's finances. Again, we're looking at roughly a $31 million project. It would be some additional dollars, about $1.5 million additional to do geothermal, but with the knowledge that, we could get about 2/3 of that back from grants. So with that, I think Josh is going to carry some, some ideas and options to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. So this slide basically lays out that should the county fund 100% of the cost, there are a couple of options. The first is to use available fund balances and other funds to go ahead with the project. The county has already committed about $3 million to this. 2.1 million of that is included in this $31 million project cost. The other 900,000, as Ken mentioned earlier, was the purchase of the land itself. The jail sales tax fund has about $7 million that could be utilized, and that would leave about $1.4 million left in that fund, which is a safe balance to hold for that purpose. The climate contingency fund is now up to, I believe, $21 or $22 million. You could use some of those funds for this project, being that it has such a close nexus to the climate and disasters. The risk, of course, with that is that if there were a disaster shortly thereafter, that fund would not have that $10 million. The goal certainly would be to replenish that over time. And then general fund or other fund balances, perhaps $11.9 million. That could be higher if, the choice was to use less or no climate contingency fund dollars. And then one item that doesn't really have a specific dollar amount now, but which could reduce those numbers above it, is if the existing property were sold at 1303 North Shield. So whatever was gained from that sale could be used to replenish, the climate contingency fund or general fund or other things. Another option would be to issue certificates of participation. I did check with our finance department to get a ballpark estimate of this. To finance $31 million in costs, it would require debt service payments of about $3 million annually if it was structured to be repaid in an equal amount over 15 years. You can structure COPs in several different ways, more at the beginning, less at the end, less at the beginning, more at the end, things like that. It would, in my judgment, I would recommend making it the same payment just to have that the knowledge of what it's going to be over 15 years, but there are ways to do that, and that's at current interest rates as well. So you could also do some kind of combination of these two items, perhaps issue a smaller certificate of participation and use some of the funds from fund balances up above. But those are the two main options should the county foot the entire bill of the facility. The next slide, unless there are questions on this slide.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Colleagues, any questions, comments? I think we should proceed.
So, as Ken has mentioned, there are grants out there to finance part of this, and so these figures could reduce that $31 million amount going forward. Should the county get $3 million from the congressionally directed spending a project, that would be about $3 million. However, those require Build America, Buy America conditions, and so those would actually raise the cost of the project, but it would net $2.2 million should we get $3 million directly from Congress. Federal tax credit for some of these energy efficiency items could be about $500,000. State of Colorado Energy Efficiency Grant, $500,000, and then a grant for the Climate Resilience Challenge Program from the Department of Local Affairs, up to $2 million. So you see these add up to about $6-7 million that could come off the top of that 31 million, plus or minus some of those additional costs for those sustainability items.
Are there questions about any of that Josh presented in terms of the different options?
Focus on this last slide.
Okay, sure.
See where that takes us.
Yeah, we're getting tight on time, I hear you. Yeah, so, we're excited to move forward. We have good amount of design and programming, completed already. We would love to continue, and we're asking for support, or consideration for support to move us forward. If we do so, if there's support to move forward and fund it in the current climate, we would anticipate having a general contractor on board. Our typical method is to bring them on board 3 to 4 months into the design process so that they partner on ideas for cost containment and things like that. This would be a little bit different because we've had this elongated process for the mechanical system study, but we're glad we did it. We feel great about it. We know there are other, kind of financial pieces at play right now with legislature and things like that in the upcoming election. So we feel certainly the overall rub that the county and the county commissioners need to decide. But we're positioned well to move it forward. If we add that extra money for the if there's support to move forward and we add the extra, we're looking at about additional 1.5. So we're in the ballpark of a $32.5 million project, knowing that we would get some back on the things that Josh just talked about. There's good news real quickly. Tim Keaton has pursued multiple years going through the congressional directed spending piece. And thus far, 3 of the 4 kind of opportunities with 2 senators and 2 Congress persons. 3 of those 4 have all indicated it's being advanced, and so that's very good news. That request is for $5 million, though it's a little bit fuzzy in terms of that they could go a little more than that potentially, or somewhat less, like we talked about with $3 million. So that, I think that's good news. We didn't have that news 2 months ago, so that's why we postponed this meeting just a little while longer to get that in front of you folks. So still don't have the number, but at this point we're encouraged by that. So. And I think that unless there are questions about it, that probably.
Well, thank you, Ken. Let's see if there are questions, feedback from the commissioners. I'm sure there are. Commissioner Shaddock and Nicolelli, would you like to begin the conversation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First question is, it costs so much to run its maintenance and running the facility. What we have currently in having this facility, is there increase in costs and maintenance and running it and things, and where does that go in the budget? What does that look like, or is it cheaper to have it at this site?
Yeah, no, the cost per square foot is in the ballpark of about $7.50 a square foot annually. So there would be some increase, on the utility side and things like that. We're obviously positively impacting it depending upon where we would head, with the mechanical systems. But that's a very good question. There would be some additional dollars. The county does a very good job of rolling into each of their capital projects the ability to fund them not only on the front end, but also the dollars that it requires to have to have our team in facilities work with the client, with the occupants of the building to maintain them for the long run. So yeah.
My second question, thank you for that. Second question is, we just received a mandatory evacuation for a wildfire. I'm not really comfortable touching that contingency fund when we're kind of heading into fire season and wondering, we need that money in case it's not if, but when. I keep saying that. And I mean, we're literally mandatory evacuating people. I don't know what's going on, but my phone's going off constantly. So, and I know yours are too. So it just makes me a little nervous to even touch that. So just to let you know about that.
Sure.
I do have some other ideas. I don't want to talk about them online, but about how to make that up maybe. But my other question is there ways that we can, back to that backup slide, I think you don't have to, but that we can start moving down this path with, because you can't just start. We have to start, like you said, starting these RFPs or do something. Is there ways to have contingencies that if we don't get this grant or get this, that we can still move forward? But is there multiple pathways to go forward? Because I certainly feel like I really like the geothermal. I think if we're trying to meet our climate plan,
Right.
we gotta not just talk about it, we gotta do it. And this is a chance for us to really do it. And I think overall it would be a huge investment in our values, but also kind of leading to show this can be done. It might be uncomfortable and painful, but it's in the long run maybe the best thing. So I'm wondering how that looks, because these are all what ifs.
Right.
I mean, they sound really great, but there's still a lot of what ifs.
Yeah. I think the short answer is that yes, we have some ability, we have flexibility in the timing. Where if we were to wait, I think that's what you're kind of getting to, what would be the impact? Generally speaking, whatever we wait and however long we would wait before the thing would be fully funded, generally speaking, that would push the project out just a little while longer, right? If we wait another 3 or 4 months, there are some things that can happen simultaneously, but generally speaking, that's what the impact would be. So right now, if all systems were go, we'd have a project, a contractor on board in, I'd say, maybe 6 to 8 weeks, right? In terms of the process, maybe a little sooner than that, followed by the final pieces or the middle and the final pieces of design, followed by groundbreaking, and then roughly 14, 15-month, construction schedule. All that slides a little bit if we wait. So I think that gets to the root of your question, does it, Commissioner?
But is there a way, and it's great information, thank you, Ken, but I'm saying, is there a way for us to go forward? And I know the sheriff's back there, like, behind you, like, indicating that yes, we do. So I don't know if we could bring the sheriff off, because he's like jumping out of his seat wanting to answer this. But I don't know if we could, Mr. Chair. I just wondering if there's ways to, because I want to say yes, but there's some, I just mentioned my concerns. So.
Absolutely. John Fan, Larimer County Sheriff, and I appreciate the cooperation of Ken and everybody at the table. I do believe that there's a path forward. We've talked extensively about what needs to happen, and I know November 5th is a big question mark for everybody in local government, right? And so can we continue the path forward without stalling the process of the project? And that's one of the decision points, get a general contractor RFP out there so they can help sharpen our pencil a little bit for financial figures and continue that path, knowing that we don't know what's going to happen on November 6th when we wake up that morning. And I think we can do that with your permission. We can move forward, get an RFP in place to get a general contractor to do some pre-construction work. And I think I'm using the vocabulary I just heard Ken talk about 3 hours ago. So if I'm using it wrong, please help me. But we can move that forward. We can move the plans forward. And that we wouldn't need to delay any of that pending November 5th. It would allow us, with the money that you've already appropriated, the $3 million, to move that planning part forward so that in anticipation that it's good news on November 6th, that we can perhaps move forward with the construction plans. The other part, the key for this, if I understand, again, from some of the conversations we had just a couple hours ago, is your desire and which way the HVAC system would go, whether it would be the standard build, but giving us some direction on that to allow the planning folks to make some of those plans, whether it's complete electrification or if it's geothermal or some kind of combination thereof. On that note, I'm going to add something you didn't ask. I know it's more costly, but I like having the ability to be completely off the grid as much as possible, right? I mean, our Director of Operation of Emergency Management ran a scenario this summer where our power grid went down for months. But we still have a continuity of operations that we need to maintain for local government, and having our ability to produce heat, air conditioning, electricity on our own without being on the grid allows our local government that opportunity for continuity of operations. Did that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, it does. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens, thoughts?
We're out of time, so.
Well, I imagine this is
my
important enough, we could extend it a bit if folks.
Yeah, I'll have to change a meeting then. I feel a little pressured with no time left to be able to make a decision and not ask any more questions. So I will just say that I do support this project. I like the idea of geothermal, exploring those grants for all the reasons that have been stated. I think likely what feels best is maybe some combination of COPs and county funding. But I don't, to get into more specifics would be hard at this point because of the time and because, yeah.
Thanks, Commissioner. I appreciate your succinctness there. My part in this would be, my preferred option would be geothermal and solar to get us off the grid. I think the sheriff makes a good point. I believe that's adding cost, but I think I'd like us to keep that in mind. Let's not dismiss that idea and figure out how we can have the smallest carbon footprint and still be fiscally responsible. So I want to put that out there. I'd like to see solar panels all around that building and on that building. And I agree we should move forward. It sounds like we can move forward with pieces of this with the funding we have, and we need to come back. There are still some numbers like what we might generate from the sale of the North Shields property. So as much as we can get numbers like from the discretionary funding deal and some of these other things, I think I wouldn't want to totally dismiss using some portion of the contingency fund, but I certainly do not want to go up to 10 point, whatever the amount was. So that's my 2 cents. We move forward, we consider the full Monty on renewable, and,
Great.
yeah.
I think the county manager would like to sum up.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I don't mean
So,
to.
no, I appreciate that. Yes, please.
So
Lorinda.
it sounds like direction-wise, you all are in favor of including geothermal in the ongoing design. The idea of solar, continue to explore other sources for funding, we'll come back and talk about that. That decision does not have to be made today because the building is being wired. That's already part of the cost. So we can put that off a little bit. With the election coming and Initiative 50 potentially hanging out there that might reduce our ability to pay for things in the future, I'm wondering if we could do an RFP for these services with the caveat that we may stop, sort of the same way we did design work. We needed that number for the grant applications, an idea to get a little further along in the project, not to slow down, but not to go beyond the money we already have allocated, so that we have a shovel-ready project the day after the election, should we need it, or a couple of years from now, if that's what it takes to, to find the funding. Not to bind you all into a decision where the money comes from. Do we do COPs? I think that could be a future discussion once we know what our revenue stream looks like in November.
Yes, the short answer is yes, Lorinda, thank you. It works great. The DOLA grant particularly has a cycle coming in July that we'll want to tag along, and that's a $2 million ask, so that's big. So I think the direction we're hearing is to move forward with the dollars that have been allocated, continue on with the, with geothermal, and do all we can to continue with the process, knowing that it may not be fully funded until right after, we'd come back and.
So you have the direction to
great.
go through the RFP process
Yep.
and see who we can come up with. Yes,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Would we, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry to delay this, but would we be able to go for that grant then in July if we go ahead and do this today and do this RFP? And you articulated this so much better. I was trying to say what you just
Yes.
said. So we can still do all of that as we go forward, so?
We can, yes.
Okay, I'm all thumbs up.
Great.
But you heard my one caveat and concern.
So in closing, good job. Thank you, colleagues, consultants. Thank you, Ken, as always, sheriff, team. I'm hoping we can build in a follow-up discussion. I'm not sure where that fits in.
Yep.
Maybe once the RFP's been put together. But I would like to have further discussion on the numbers and what that might look like and whether or not it's feasible or fiscally responsible to consider.
There'll be some incremental, news that we get along the way, right, with some of these grant process pieces, and so that might be a good time to, to try to piggyback onto that.
But ultimately,
We'll
I
do that.
think we need to have a discussion about, do we even go near the contingency fund? Do we use some combination of COPs? I'm not quite sure when we're going to have that discussion, but Josh, you can help us with that.
Yeah, we have a retreat on the budget after the election, so that would be a
Oh,
good time.
after the election.
And we can schedule something special too.
What's that?
Well, I would just say if Initiative 50 passes, there would likely be no general fund dollars to be able to contribute to that.
Understood, 100%.
And there would be cuts in addition to
Understood.
not being able to build this building. I hope people are aware of that, and people who are listening who are aware of that.
So I appreciate that's a good reality check. It's a bit of a downer closing comment. So as a more positive closing comment, a lot of good work, a lot of dedication to getting this thing done. We need to get it done for all the reasons. So thank you all very much. It's 3:35 p.m. We are adjourned.
Thank you.